Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is Roger Connect, President of Universal Accounting Center, and I am your host. It's here on the show that each and every week we invite the guests to address various topics that we can basically focus on as we operate our businesses to, in fact, have the premier accounting firm in our area, whether it be marketing, selling, pricing, strategic things that we can do with our clients, staffing our offices, and training our team to be effective in the services that they provide. All these topics are fair game for the conversations that we're going to have. It is my honor to have on the show today Chris Papin. He is the owner and operator of Papin CPA, Papin Law, and Papin Insurance, each of which are individual companies that he runs. It may seem like a lot, but in essence, he represents the small businesses and small business owners as they navigate legal, tax, and entrepreneurial things in their journey into the future. Chris is an industry thought leader and has a unique approach to client representation as he's recognized in various third-party recognitions, acknowledgments for his innovation, leadership, and excellent client representation. So with that, Chris, welcome to the show.
Cheers, my friend. Thank you.
This is going to be a lot of fun. Well, it is a mouthful, and it's your life, so it's worth recognizing. So congratulations for that. So, Chris, this is first and foremost my simple way of saying I get a lot of questions about the law firm and the CPA firms. When someone is licensed in both, which was the more difficult exam, passing the bar or getting your CPA?
Give me a little runway. But the shortcut answer to this is the CPA exam.
All right.
The journey is during law school, I took the CPA exam. I didn't know any better. I was just going through, did my thing. Looking back on it, maybe that wasn't the brightest use of my bandwidth and time's off. Mm-hmm. But from my perspective, the CPA exam was more broad. Law is very focused on statute, rules, regulations, kind of the legal components. Some of those legal components are woven into the CPA exam. Just like accounting firms representing small business kind of get drug into all the different things. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, I also think statistics in Oklahoma are a little off. Most pass the law exam, the bar exams. Most do not pass the CPA exam.
Yeah.
So I'm a numbers guy. Let's stay with the statistics.
There you go. Well, I can definitely tell you that everyone that I have asked that has, like you, both their legal and their accounting backgrounds, they'll definitely say the CPA exam is harder. So I find that fascinating. So I'm batting 100 in that question there. The other thing that I wanted to ask is, in having the skills to actually do these services, it's interesting that you have 3 distinct businesses offering those services. So I'm just wanting to start, first of all, with the entrepreneurial question. Why start your own company and why the 3 you have?
So why start my own company kind of is an efficiency conversation. During school, a lot of the questions I would ask kind of as you're progressing through accounting, hey, why are we skipping these chapters, or why is there kind of a lesser focus on certain areas in the curriculum? And all of the professors are going, well, that's technically legal work. Like we can interpret, we can give guidance, but we can't draft and we can't represent the client from a legal perspective. Mm-hmm. At a young age, I'm going, well, that's dumb. Why can't you do that all in one spot?
Yeah.
Recognizing there's state licensing limitations that go with that. So I was on that path anyway. It just reinforced, hey, I kind of want to build this one-stop shop.
Yeah.
And anybody that's ever been represented by multiple professionals, just getting the meeting is a nightmare.
Yes.
So in bundling that, a lot of the conversation is which do you do more? Or why is it 3 businesses? Or because I have to, because it's different licensing and there's limitations that go with each. But at the end of the day, an entrepreneur is looking to have a deeper conversation. All of the successful business owners that I know have different members that sit at the board of directors table, if you will. They're not the expert in the room on life insurance.
Yeah.
Well, as a CPA, I was getting questions about life insurance. As an attorney, I draft an estate plan and hand things off to other folks. And no offense to my strategic partners on this, but if I build a plan, hand it off, and it comes back different than I anticipated, I don't need you for that. So let's go get that license too. I've stayed out of securities because I do step in as a fiduciary in estates, and that puts me in an actual conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So that's the other question of like, hey, why don't you step in and, work with your broker dealers and stuff? We've got great strategic partners there, But the law and CPA license allow me to give the same advice. I just can't make the trades. I don't, get into the nitty gritty of that piece, but the strategy is where it all lies. And I think you kind of have a similar experience of the big picture. Somebody's got to own, somebody's got to be the quarterback, right?
Yes. Well, the thing that's interesting is you actually just answered one of my next questions, which was, is there a fiduciary conflict as it relates to accounting and legal? I didn't expect that there would be, but you indicated that there isn't. And that's nice to know, because I'd like to think that there's a collaboration going on there. But the thing that's also interesting to me is, in college, you saw how there's this complementary relationship between the two, and there's no need to be passing things off when you could obviously fulfill both needs. But it didn't answer the entrepreneurial question. It's one thing to recognize that there's value in becoming licensed in both and having that skill set, perhaps even finding employment providing that same service. But to go on the entrepreneurial journey, was that something you always intended to do? There's a mindset that's different within the entrepreneur, is my point.
What my story is it boils down to, I don't know any other way. Mom and dad were both entrepreneurs. They had their own businesses. They were educators at our local university. Through different avenues, that's just what I knew and what I saw. So I sought different experiences working in large corporations, working for other firms. Each of those scenarios all were great, and I would absolutely go back and do again, but they didn't fulfill that whole whatever I wanted. So that's kind of what drove me down the path of, hey, I think I can do this my way, if you will, that will fulfill that. I can give back to my community. I can help folks in different ways. And I fully recognize I might be able to do the exact same things you might do, but my style's different than someone else's.
Yeah.
In the importance of style to be able to communicate with folks is incredibly powerful. So we recognize we're not for all people, but for the people that we are for, we want to do it in that consolidated way. And that's kind of the inspiration, if you will, that drove me down that path.
Well, one of the things I can definitely respect is once you've either seen or bitten the apple, you do want to become a little bit more of that entrepreneur, running your own business, having that influence, having the direction and vision of where this all needs to go as it relates to the client and what you're doing. So I appreciate that. But at the same time, where you now have these skills, it puts you in a unique relationship with your clients, because they can turn to you for the legal, for the insurance, for the accounting. And I'm curious, where do you find the client first from a marketing point of view being most interested in your services? What is that thing that draws them to say, hey, let's start a conversation? Is it the attorney, the legal advice that draws them in, or is it first the accounting that gets them interested?
Probably 75% of the conversations revolve around finance, tax, and accounting.
Interesting.
It's to me, it's the easiest thing to relay to like a referral source.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know of somebody who was surprised by a tax bill?
Exactly.
Everybody lives that journey.
Yep.
We do get a good set of referral sources from new businesses. We work with a lot of startups and entrepreneurs. Not all firms want that style or that lack of maturity in a business. I do.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's kind of my jam. That's what we know. So we get a lot of startups that way. And then there's also kind of that next level. I call it talking about it. We've all had the conversation where somebody walks in and says, well, one of these days I'd really like to talk about fill in the blank, building my business to the next level, or retiring, or getting my kids involved. So I take that and I say, hey, if somebody's talking about it, get them in front of me, because I can try to compel action. Now, some people want to take action. Others just want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But that's where that legal niche can really kick in, because there's a fear of the billable hour. There's a fear of a cost. And if I can develop a relationship with somebody and they understand, hey, he's trying to advance a goal, it's not about running the clock, then every accountant I know right now has plenty of work. We're not looking for extra things to do necessarily, which helps clients. They truly do know you're aligned with their mission, as opposed to a surprise bill. Scope is a bear inside of that. And in our industry, it's hard. I mean, there's changing everything. So, that scope creep can be difficult, but we just make sure we sit next to folks, ask them, is this something you want? Can we help you? I don't have to be all things for all people. I can be just the accountant or just the attorney.
Yeah.
That's okay too.
So when it comes to accounting, let's go a little deeper there, because
Yeah.
obviously with my audience, that's the space that the world we live in. Knowing that in your marketing, that's where people are most kind of drawn to you, and that's great. So I'm curious, are you offering bookkeeping services, accounting services? I know you're in the advisory space, and I'm going to dive deeper into that in a moment. But I heard tax a moment ago. Just real quickly, summarize the services in the accounting space that you're providing.
Yeah, the cliff notes on this splits into two pieces. The forward looking is the advisory, and I'll
Hmm.
put a pin in that. And then I call it maintenance. It's tax, accounting. We do non-attestation level work. The
Okay.
idea is to allow a business owner or a manager, the decision makers, to have the information necessary to make intelligent advisory decisions. And in somewhere in that space, I think a lot of folks that are listening have had clients, hey, if you could just tell me what my tax liability would be, that'd be great. And you're laughing at them going, how? I don't have your books. I don't know your income. You don't know your income, but yet I'm supposed to have that answer.
Yeah.
And that's where we're building a platform to try to help folks understand what it takes to answer that question. Because it's not just as simple as fill out a form and hand somebody something. It my stories always revolve around the neighbor or the conference marketing pitch. You have a business, therefore you can depreciate a car. It doesn't work like that. We're the bad guys in that sense, but I think there's an education journey, and clients crave that handhold along the way. So yes, in the tax accounting, those are the necessary evils, the backwards looking, if you will,
Yeah.
as opposed to the forward looking.
Well, clearly there's a role to be played there, and that's something that we're doing as a profession. But let's take the pin out of the advisory side of things. And I think that's really where I like to spend my time. It's what I find most interesting. You spoke earlier of giving the business owner information so that they can make informed business decisions. And I think that's really where the advisory plays its best role, is helping the business owner be more informed so that they can be intelligent as they're running their companies. So what is it that's unique about the advisory services that you're providing? What is that experience like for your clients?
So we kind of break it down into three levels. It's really two, but there's a base level for those entrepreneurs, for folks that are great at their craft. Let's say they're an online marketing expert.
Okay.
They don't know a damn thing about debits and credits. They don't know what goes to a balance sheet, what's deductible, what's not deductible. They may or may not know whether or not they should be using separate checking accounts. I'm going to pick on our dear friends at QuickBooks. I'm a QuickBooks Online user, but some of their offerings allow folks to commingle stuff, and they believe that that's okay because they can do some sort of separate accounting for it.
Yeah.
In an audit, that's a disaster, but they don't know those things. So that's where we really try to step in and shine. And we've try to use the phrase "behave like a business owner."
Okay.
Does Coca-Cola allow their CEO's personal vehicle to be used all day, every day in the business without titling it properly, without insuring it properly? Because if they don't, you shouldn't. If there's some exceptions, like borrowing a wife's vehicle from time to time to run an errand, how do you stay compliant? How do you manage risk? How do you not get a lawsuit because your employee borrowed your wife's SUV to do some stuff and somebody got hurt? All of that stuff is relevant. But at the end of the day, they don't care. they just want to do their thing. They want somebody to care for them. And that's where we've got to step up and have intelligent conversations to say, hey, it may be convenient to borrow the personal vehicle, but if you're not doing it right, you've created this unnecessary risk. Oh, by the way, I got a law firm.
Yeah.
But somewhere in there, people don't know that stuff.
Yeah. I think your car example is an excellent one. And I could see so many conversations starting here, because when you're a small business and you're just thinking, okay, one of the things that I can do is put a sign out in front of my house, and there I am in business. It's official. I've got this sign that I've put in my yard. But next best thing, let's put a sign on my vehicle. So I've got my personal car. I put a wrap on it, a sign on it, some decal, and all of a sudden something occurs while I'm driving, and I've opened up a can of worms because I may not have it insured properly. It may be under my personal policy, but now because it's identified as a company vehicle, I may have opened up a can of worms as it relates to my business, and the risk or liability that then is exposed wasn't realized by me by some, poster, sticker, whatever I put on my vehicle. And your perspective, knowing both the legal, the accounting, and the insurance side of things, enables you to properly enlighten the client as to their risk, their exposure, the liabilities. And these are insights that they may not have considered. They just thought they were being great marketers because they heard somewhere a great way to put, to market your services, if you're a plumber, is to put around your vehicle the sign because you're parked out in front of your client's home for 2 hours as you're taking care of them. What would you say to that?
You're spot on. And that kind of helps illustrate some of our base level advisory journey. We're trying to answer the questions that we know somebody's going to have in 18 months or might have if they're in that car accident. We all, listeners, you, me, we all have clients that say priority number one is wealth building. And then the first thing they ask you is, should I buy a vehicle, the only depreciating asset on earth, in my business? Do you need it? No. But I heard I could write it off. That's a tax savings, right? It's not a wealth building tool, guys. It's a business tool. Use it for the right purpose. I am not against depreciating vehicles, but for what purpose?
Yeah.
In that journey that you just laid out, we do try to take folks through in a very intentional manner in that base level environment. There's kind of a mid-level for more mature businesses as well. And then of course there's I call it just custom. You get folks that maybe are more sophisticated or in a different life cycle of their business. So you've got to adapt the conversation because some folks actually know what they need to do with their business vehicles. They're titled properly. They've got that stuff buttoned up.
Yeah.
It's about next level conversations.
That's right. On the vehicle front, well, there's a few things that just come flooding to the mind here. One of them is a lot of people are in this space of not just driving for the local pizza company and doing deliveries, but it's the Uber drivers, it's the Lyft drivers. And as you do these rideshare type things, as I understand it, on a personal policy, if you're using the vehicle, you're no longer covered the moment you take a rideshare thing. And the rideshare company won't cover you while you're in transit from one to the next pickup. So there's this open window, as I understand it, where because you're en route to pick up somebody, you're not covered by your personal policy. And because you're now doing a drive, you're not covered by your policy either. So can you offer any clarity to that?
So I'm going to go back to scope creep.
Uh-huh.
It happens in our industry all the time. And it's the exact same thing in the insurance industry to some extent. Now, some insurance companies are great at collecting premiums and not very good at paying policy claims. So, there's both sides of this token here. But if I am an insurance company and I have chosen to insure you personally, that's a certain set of risk for a certain fee.
Correct.
The business owner is now doing something different. And they absolutely need to be having conversations around proper and coordinating coverages like you're talking about. A business coverage isn't going to cover personal and a personal isn't going to cover business. And there's this gray in between. There's policies for that.
Yep.
There's ways to go achieve those goals. And we in our world might know a little bit about that. And giving somebody just this much or sitting next to them while they're talking with their insurance agent to help decide what makes financially the most sense is really what's important. Real stories are always kind of where everything comes from for me. But we had a side gig business that was photography. The minute they got another employee, we started talking about employee contractor. It was a contractor in their mind. It was an employee in real world.
Okay.
Workers' comp. I started asking, what do they do? Oh, they hold lighting so we can get the wedding photos. I'm like, how do they hold the lighting? Well, sometimes they're getting on chairs. I'm freaking out. And they're over on the other side going, well, I can't afford to buy a general liability policy to cover all of this stuff. I'm just a side gig. And I was like, guys, you're either a business or you're not.
Yes.
Pick one. And it was the first time somebody said it to them. So they had to kind of rethink, wait, what's my pricing structure? How should I charge for these? This person was just trying to have fun and help friends and family at special events. But at what cost?
What you're
If that person falls off that chair and is disabled the rest of their life because she was working for you or he was working for you, then what?
Yeah. What you're illustrating is those gray areas where somebody has a skill, a talent, and they do a family or friend a favor because they're helping, like you're describing with a wedding. My wife, she's a caterer in the sense that she's very good with food, and we've helped many a friend and family by helping with the reception, providing the catering, and it's out of goodwill. There's no compensation, there's no payment.
Yeah.
It's just a favor. But then somebody gets wind, and all of a sudden you're asked to do something for a fee. Hey, I'll pay you. You're not exactly going to take advantage of this relationship, so I'll pay you something. Well, that's nice. You got something, but it's nothing official, nothing formative. But all of a sudden that turns into one, then two, then three. And at some point, like you're explaining, I think you're running a business now. This has transitioned from a favor, something you're doing for friends and family, to a hobby, to I think you need to consider the liabilities, risks, the taxes that you're now owing. And there's this shift that they make as a business to, oh my heavens, I've got to be treating this differently than I have and take it a lot more seriously. And as it relates to the Uber driver type thing, I was referring back in my mind to an individual that happened to be an owner of a bookkeeping business. She had a daughter in college. The daughter was considering, what can I do? It was recommended, well, do this as a business because they heard all these things that we can start writing off, but they didn't realize the insurance ramifications of this. Here's the daughter out driving around doing these services, able to write off this, that, and the other, able to make an income. But there were some insurance liabilities that I had to bring up and just say, hey, by the way, you need to look at this because there is a risk associated.
And that's a beautiful value proposition. Listeners, you, me, there's a monetary mathematical equation. That's what most people drive off of. What about all this other stuff? Is it worth the extra $100 a month to potentially take on the burden of a lawsuit? Do you have coverage for a lawsuit? I tell clients all the time, it's not the verdict in the lawsuit that's going to bury you. It's the legal fees.
Yeah.
You can't not defend yourself. I know that's a double negative, but you've got to be proactive. If you don't, you lose. So, okay, does it make sense? And we've lived like COVID era financial accounting world. We've lived changes and we don't know the law, and we're handing people disclaimer letters, but you've got to be able to sit next to folks and help reason through those, not look backwards and say, oh, back in 2022, when you did that photography thing, you should have bought insurance. Hence advisory versus maintenance conversations, right?
Exactly. And as I've been in the advisory space, and this is kind of where we started this part of the conversation, as I've been in the advisory space, it's nice to be in a position where I can educate my clients as to things they aren't seeing because they're not familiar, they're not experienced. I'm able to bring that experience to the table and say, here are some things that you may not be considering as you make these decisions in the business. And I'm able to give them perspective. And now they're considering things they didn't think of, but it's eliminating risks just because they weren't aware. Can you give some other examples of how in the advisory space that makes sense? Because you alluded to there were three things you focus on. You shared the first. I don't think you mentioned the second or third.
Yeah. So think about life cycles of a business. There's a startup phase. I call it a growth phase. Like you get past startup and you get to growth, and all of a sudden you're making a lot of money. And what a lot of business owners do is they look back to startup phase and they say, oh, that's all I paid in taxes. Look at all this money I have.
Yeah.
Then there's a maturity phase. And this is kind of where personnel and systems and all that stuff comes in. So I look at those life cycles and we try to line our conversations up according to the potential pain points. But the essence of kind of what's going on there is I've been able to ride this train with my businesses. Mom and dad did it inside of their businesses, so I got to watch them do it.
Yeah.
My father passed. My brother took over for dad with a succession plan. I've seen it live personally. Then I've represented hundreds and thousands of clients doing the same thing. Whereas a client has started a business one time and they have maybe some perspective from family or friends, but they don't understand. Is a universal truth, random poll for the podcast here, but put your hand in the air if you've ever had a client say, I don't understand how my estimated taxes weren't enough to cover all of my taxes. Well, our estimate was based on last year. You made more money this year. Yeah, but I don't understand how I owe more taxes. those are the real conversations that people live because they've not been through it. And we live in financial land, so it makes sense to us. But none of these rules make sense. Quarterly estimated taxes are not measured quarterly. That's not logical. So we got to help folks see that and understand that and be steps ahead of them. Another fun phrase I like to say is, it's hard to say I told you so without saying I told you so.
Uh-huh.
But these are those pain points that if you can give people some perspective to look at and hopefully get enough runway to work with people to avoid, they're eternally grateful.
I liked your example of the quarterly taxes for two reasons. One, I think it's important that when we take on the advisory, we're able to say, not just here's what you did last quarter, but here's the ramifications of it. The quarterlies that you're paying were based on numbers from last year. You're clearly doing much better. We need to consider paying more because it's going to come later. And that right there, you're the bearer of news. I'm not going to say good or bad news. You're the bearer of news. And what we're trying to do here is give them choices and options. Look, you can pay more in quarterlies. We're not suggesting you have to, but we're saying you're going to have to owe later on. And if you continue on this trajectory, the next quarter, it's going to compound. And what we're going to do is we're going to get ahead of something that if you don't plan for it, could be a gotcha. Well, that's in that advisory space, helping them see things that they're perhaps not being aware of, not paying attention to. Wow, we had the best quarter we've ever had, and I'm just going to pay what I thought I might and not think I owe anymore. Well, that's not helping our clients because they're probably going to spend those monies and invest in other things. And when the tax piper comes, we're going to have to pay them. And that's something that I think that your point illustrates. The second thing that I'd like to point out is in the advisory space, I think it is our role to give them those insights. And the tax example is an excellent illustration of that. They have to be so focused on their day-to-day operations, they're not thinking about these things. And so often they can be gotchas. And I'd rather tell them at the quarterly phase than a year's worth of great growth and gains that they're trying to celebrate and be the bearer of 4 quarterlies that are now off. And we have to make up this huge sum. So would you add anything more to that?
The couple of quick things that come to mind. One is you need to say the obvious.
Yes.
Sometimes there's $100,000 at the bottom of a profit and loss. And sometimes people know what that means and sometimes they don't. And there is no harm in reiterating that, hey, guess what? That means roughly $30K in taxes.
Yes.
Can't take that for granted. Dentists show you the gray on an x-ray, right? I don't know whether it's a cavity or not. And they tell you and they reiterate and they show you the progression. Why aren't we doing the same things? The other one that I think you did a beautiful job illustrating is bearing the burden of 4. Remember, money is always an emotional conversation. I don't care what you think. Mom's a counselor, so this goes way back. Like she was into emojis before they were called emojis with all of the different relational tools that are available to mental health professionals. But it's a whole lot easier to prep somebody and tell them 2 or 3 times. You're going to take it in the shorts if you don't. Then, oh, by the way, you got $100,000 you owe. How you think that's going to go?
Yes. Yes.
We've all done that, and it's brutal. But you've got to say the obvious in there to make sure that folks are seeing it the way you see it.
I loved your choice of words there, the word obvious. It's so obvious to us, but that's because of our profession. We're looking at the numbers differently than they are. They're seeing profit. They're seeing we did better than we expected. They're seeing let's celebrate. This is something worth recognizing. And we're the ones that need to temper that storm and basically put a little bit of perspective on this. And that's the obvious. And the emotions can get the better of them and they can go spend that. And now we're saying, okay, what are you going to do to come up with the difference? So love that. Next was after the growth phase, the third phase of the business where you're talking about processes and systems. Tell me about that.
So this can be all over the board. And I'm going to relate it to the accounting industry because we're all living it right now. But personnel are few and far between. Mm-hmm. The types of work are complex and challenging. To some extent, it's a little bit of a dysfunctional relationship because clients expect you to perform miracle work with information you do not have. So in that space, folks have to be innovative. They have to be involved in their business. They have to think their way through delegations. They have to create systems and tools to get to the next chapter. It's easy to watch a TikTok video or YouTube and be like, oh, I can automate and I can use AI and I can. Go to Chat GPT right now and ask it to do something. And there's limitations that are going to be in that ask every single time. And that's the piece where I don't know that people have great resources to think. I call them brainstorming sessions, but it's literally just reasoning your way through. I do not have the answers for all of these entrepreneurs. I know that. But I do know that if you follow a sequence and think your way through certain issues, it yields a better result than if you just click a button or buy an app or hope that your team will figure it out.
Yeah.
The best roofers, and I'm borrowing this from one of our clients, the best roofers that have all of these reviews typically do one simple thing. They put tarps down before and they clean up with magnets after. That's it. It's not that they did the roof differently or they buy different materials. It's that they don't let stuff go into the neighbor's yard, or that they don't let a screw puncture somebody's tire. All those dumb little things that happen when you re-roof a home. Simple, easy stuff, but read reviews on roofers one of these days and you'll watch. You'll see what's in there. Their crews were disrespectful or, didn't use the right vocab around children. All kinds of stuff like that. It's subtle, but it's important.
Yeah.
And those are those systems growth, just this much intentionality. I know there's not a whole lot of video, but a little bit of intentionality on this goes such a long way towards that next step. And again, there are packages, there's, a path that you can put people on, but there's no right answer for every business. The minute you get entrepreneurs that can invest with you and understand that, but also look in from the outside and say, wait a minute, you've helped other folks do this. You run a pretty successful shop. There's your value proposition. Yeah. That's how you start to build trust. And hey, you take life as it comes every single day.
Well, one of the things I want to build off of is your comment of you don't have all the right answers. But what I would say to that is we do and should have a lot of the right questions. They are running the business. These are decisions they need to make. But in this advisory role, what we should be is the one that they're able to have that open dialogue that you were alluding to, so that we can talk through things, and it's for them to have their epiphanies. It's for them to have their breakthrough moments. It's for them to realize what the next steps are. And I realize that business can be very involved and busy, but when they can step aside and with you kind of brainstorm and talk through different scenarios, I'm very shocked every time I have my client meetings of how they have those epiphany moments of, you asked something, we were talking through something, I now have clarity that I did not have 10 minutes ago simply because we walked through this conversation together. And that's where a great appreciation for the services that we offer as advisors really comes to play. They, as business owners, get to make those decisions and they get to own those decisions, but we were part of the process.
I'm going to borrow something a client said to us the other day. When I've known this woman, we went to law school together. So, there's a long-standing relationship. There's kind of a known quantity that comes with us. But when they first started their business, I mentioned to her, we're going to take on a different cadence as things mature. You're in startup mode, so there's a lot of stuff you want, and it would give you a lot of clarity, but it doesn't make sense to spend that money now. And she came back to me the other day and she said, Chris, this whole quarterly brainstorm check-in, whatever you want to call it, meeting really illustrates the clarity I was looking for. And you're right. No, I could not have afforded this when I was starting up my business. But it's everything you just said in that sense of a lot of times we're not answering the question, we are asking. In some instances, it's just validating. Mm-hmm. Yes, this is what other business owners do. Yes, this is an industry norm. But you have to create that space. Then, the last that comes to mind on this deal is business owners are a different breed. The successful ones, statistically, like you go through all the statistics, it's a third standard deviation likelihood you're in the room with someone else that thinks like you do and behaves like you do. So that's why I think podcasts like these are so popular is because you're bringing some amazing ideas all into one spot and giving people the power and leverage to work with their peers, because you can't ask your subordinate these questions.
Yes.
And you're lucky if you're asking professionals in some instances that have enough skill set to answer the questions. Not taking shots at anybody, but I'm a lawyer and an insurance agent for a reason. Insurance agents can't say both and lawyers can't say both. That overlap's important sometimes. And I think uniquely positioning with folks, like you said, how can I ask another professional on your behalf something I have expertise in that you don't to get you a better result is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. To your point of this client of yours that was the lawyer, I have a story that I think will illustrate one of the points that you shared there, which is the relevance of when timing in business is right. We teach basically 9 principles to make the business profitable. They come from a book called In the Black. And with my clients, we always teach the 9 principles, and they get exposed to them early on in the engagement. We go through them over a 12-month period. But what's interesting is I have a client that I've been now working, I think, 3 or 4 years. They're in a tremendous growth phase right now, and they were dealing with a number of issues recently that I then brought to the table this same chart of the 9 principles. They've seen it before, and I put it in front of them and I said, look, what we're dealing with right now are these first of the 9. It's basically the short term, and the essence of what they are nothing happens until you make a sell, and cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. That's 2 of the 3. Those were the specific things they were dealing with right now. And as we started to revisit these talking points, they admitted, we saw this before. This looks familiar. I remember going over this, but this today is the essence of exactly what we're dealing with right now. This is what's keeping us up at night. This is what is needing our attention. This makes so much more sense because of the context that it's now being presented in. And my reason for bringing that up is, like your example, I think our clients are in situations where they'll hear things, want things, maybe need things, but we're able as the advisor to help them time them more correctly, slow them down in some situations to say, maybe this isn't the right timing for this. Or we're able to say, I think you're not putting attention where it's needed. Have you considered looking at this a little bit more? Let's talk about this a little bit. And you're able to get them away from some shiny objects. You're able to help them prioritize a little bit better. The role we're playing in business can be so instrumental in that advisory space. So I love this part of the conversation because I think as accounting professionals, we can do so much more in this area. So this is really good. I want to switch gears on us just for a quick minute. I know that during the tax season, you play soccer or you coach soccer. First of all, I've got to assume this is family related, but second of all, how do you mentally justify it in the sense of you're being pulled during the tax season, perhaps? How do you basically say, but this is the priority? Share with us a little bit on that.
So your assumption is wrong. It's actually a passion project.
Very good.
And when people hear it, they're going, and you what? It's not a paid gig. It's something that I started 20 some odd years ago with the school I went to school at. They called, they wanted to develop a middle school program that kind of helped feed the high school, bring folks together in a different way. Over the years, this is one of the better programs in the state. They're always competing for titles. Again, there's an intentionality that probably revolves around some of that. We choose to invest in this, so it helps. But to address your actual question, how do I justify it? I think it comes back to work-life balance things.
Good.
This is something I enjoy. Anybody that's ever been around 12 to 14-year-old people, there is no half investment in their life. They demand your attention. And if you don't, somebody's getting in trouble, and it's probably you. But inside of that, I get outside. There's a mental health element to that that's unquantifiable to me. Yeah, there are some days where I got to duck out on a Thursday at 2:00 and people are going, but it's tax season. but we're doing it right. We're building a firm that's not chasing deadlines we're trying to be in front of. Our clients expect us to have lives outside of business. So I can share stories like I've had multiple MLS players. I've had folks part of the international programs. I've had folks part of the Olympic development programs. A couple of years ago, one of my former players won the MLS Cup.
Wow.
So it's cool, fun stories. And of course, I'm taking all the credit for that in like the 2 weeks that I got to coach him, not at all. It's
when
all
they were
on the
12 and
players.
14.
But it's fun relational stories. And there's relationships, there's clients that are born out of that. But that's life. That's the essence of the good stuff that people really need to invest in. And I think when clients see me have that balance or recognize what's going on, they kind of opt in, and there's an extra validator inside of that says he's not all work and no play. And we like that. We want to emulate that. That's where you hear me say, not everybody's for me. If you want somebody that's going to grind all day, every day, not my style.
Yeah.
And there are days where it's important that you do that. You've got a deliverable. You got to deliver. You have a standard, meet it at whatever cost. But try to build a platform that allows you to do the fun too. So I hope that kind of answers the justification. Again, I literally don't know any other way. It's just something I've always done in the spring. I played as a kid. It's ingrained in me. It's a lifestyle. So that's what we go do.
Well, Chris, I'm going to speak for probably a lot of people to say, I don't think anyone questions your ability to focus and be intentional about anything, being both a lawyer, an attorney, and an insurance person. So there's no hesitation to say, clearly you've got your priorities in some good places. But I like the fact that you are working to live. The essence of that work-life balance that you were alluding to, yeah, I think a lot of people probably look to you and use your example as permission for themselves to actually have those hobbies and extracurricular activities and to step away from the office. So I appreciate you for setting the standard and setting the example. So we all need that. And I'm grateful that you're not abashed in saying so, because the youth, especially in my opinion, are a gem to work with. Having worked with youth myself, the stories that I have, the impacts they have had on my life, and more importantly, mine on theirs, have been tremendous. And I've had the privilege now of seeing them grow up, go to college, and now get married, and to be invited to their weddings. It's it's a wonderful experience. It's where you see, what, maybe they were paying attention. Maybe I did have a good positive effect on them. And most importantly, there's a little bit of legacy. At the end of the day, we'd like to think we're leaving a good footprint on the world we live in. And that's very nice. So I encourage everyone to get out there and have something that they're doing to give back to the community in some way. So I'm grateful that you've chose soccer, and you're clearly doing a great job of it. All right. Well, here's what I need to do. I need to wrap this up. This has been an amazing conversation. Chris, you're very, very insightful. I love the topics of discussion. Before I move on, I'd like to actually point out, though, for my listeners, that Chris is offering something that you want to take advantage of. It's in the episode description. You can go there to find out about Chris's quarterly free webinars that he does, where he covers a variety of topics that benefit entrepreneurs. So as an entrepreneur, you clearly want to go and listen to these quarterly webinars that he puts on, ranging in a variety of topics that are all entrepreneurial based. So definitely check out the episode description for more information on how you can become a listener to his quarterly webinars. In addition, you can find there a number of things that are great resources for you as the owner of a bookkeeping, accounting, and tax business. Essentially, the thing that I'd like to highlight today is the turnkey business model. It happens to be the turnkey plan for business owners in operating successful businesses as it relates to offering quality accounting services. So I invite you to go check out the turnkey business plan for accounting professionals and see what it is you can be doing to actually work on your business and, in fact, build the premier accounting firm in your area. In addition to all that, what I'd like you to do is also understand that there are some free ebooks there, books that you can actually learn from and grow, such as In the Black, 9 Principles to Make Your Business Profitable, which I was sharing earlier. In addition to that, let me do a little summary here. First of all, I appreciated Chris's insights as to starting his business. Clearly in college, he saw Well, of course, this is what you do. With his parents setting the way, he was already in tune with the idea of, well, you go out and start your business and you put your fingerprint on the things that you're providing as services to the business community. And in doing so, he started 3 dynamic business models of legal services, accounting services, and insurance services, each complementing what it is that the business owner needs in order to effectively start their business. As he mentions, he focuses on with individuals starting their companies as they grow their businesses and deal with the various challenges that exist there, and then ultimately work on their businesses to address the various systems and processes that they need to implement to build their companies an asset so that they can actually have something there that is of worth. Wonderful that he was able to put him into those 3 little categories. I think those illustrate very well how he services his clients. The thing that I also thought was very interesting is early on in the conversation, I asked, of those services, which is typically the thing that draws businesses to initially want to speak with him? And I was curious to see which he would say. And he mentioned that more often than not, it is the accounting. It's the person who's dealing with the accounting questions, the tax-related questions. That's where the conversations begin. And I think that's a very great illustration of our value in the space of the services we offer. Realize there is a need, there is a want, there's a desire for understanding. And if we can just listen, this is so often what the businesses owners want. They want to legally lower their tax liability. They want to figure out how to keep money in the bank. And at the end of the day, they want to know, how can I do this profitably? I'm in business and I need to make money. If I can't, this is going to go away, most likely my livelihood. So can you help me legally lower my tax liability? Can you help me keep money in the bank? Can you help me do this profitably? We address those needs, help them with those situations, and clearly we're going to be able to retain clients for life. Now, with that, I also wanted to point out that at the end, he was very good at sharing his insights as it related to soccer. Clearly, I thought there's got to be a family member or somebody that drew him in. No, it's because he had his priorities where they were as to serving the community and having an influence, and he's clearly done that with a good commitment with the younger children. I'm grateful to hear that he's had the success stories that he has, because I do feel that even without those accolades, I know that we as adults influencing our younger youth can make a difference in the communities, whether or not they get the MVP awards that they obviously have. We definitely can be a positive influence on so many of the children that we could interact with. And I'm grateful that he chose soccer. I love soccer, so I'm partial there. So Chris, with that, what final thought would you like to leave with?
So I'm gonna end you with a quote that I'm reading. I wish I could get this right every single time, but it's a quote from Ernest Hemingway that says, "There's nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self."
Wow.
Which is what I think the listeners are doing today. They're trying to advance tomorrow. And I challenge everybody to keep that near and dear as they go. It's a driving force in my life. I try to get it to the soccer players as well. It's a good thing to end on.
Love it. Chris, thank you. I appreciate that. For all my listeners, if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to have you receiving notifications of the new episodes each and every week. I also invite you to, with your subscription, to go check out our past episodes. We've got now over 200 episodes, quickly climbing to 300. We've compiled a number of them into different lists or topics, playlists that you can go binge listen to. You can go to universalaccounting.com and there see a variety of playlists that we've organized with the experts related to marketing, selling, pricing, mental health, staffing, client onboarding, and so much more. Definitely take advantage of your time and address the needs you have by hearing from the experts. Also, I want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference for accounting professionals, owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses, and I want to invite you. I'd like to see you there. GrowCon is an annual event that you do not want to miss. It is held in May of the year. It is a conference that we do where we actually invite experts to speak from the stage, where you get to meet with your peers, collaborate, and figure out what it is you can be doing to work on your business, and also meet the team here at Universal Accounting Center that are committed to helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal. So definitely get your ticket and join us for GrowCon. More information can be found in the episode description. And then lastly, if you'd like more information about these principles and things that we've discussed today, feel free to give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777, or you can go to universalaccountingschool.com and get the information there. With all that being said, always remember this: accounting success is universal. Take care, be safe out there, and have a great day.